hi everyone. I'm Tracy Stein, and welcome to my podcast, Unpacking Possibility. As some of you know, I'm a licensed psychologist and I'm certified in clinical hypnosis. And often I talk about things that are very spiritually uplifting or just, kind of feel good topics that are definitely important for us to talk about. But sometimes I think it's important to also look at the things that are uncomfortable to look at, but by not doing so, we can do ourselves harm. And that's actually the theme of today's episode. So what you don't know can harm you, but it doesn't have to. And the thing I wanted to talk about is toxic people. Now, everyone encounters toxic people, probably more often than we realize a lot of times, but you'll know the toxic people in your own life because you'll just be left with a sense of unease. Or if you think about how you treat them versus how they treat you, you'll find that, wow, they treat you in a way that you would never treat other people. The thing with toxic people is that many of them are so good and so skilled at convincing people that their own experiences, their own emotions, or their own perceptions are not accurate, right? So for example, that's having a friend who maybe has betrayed your trust in some way, but then leads you to believe that either they haven't betrayed your trust despite the evidence, or that if they did, it's your fault for one reason or another. That's a type of toxic person. Another type of toxic person is somebody who just kind of loves to create chaos, and they get a real charge out of it, but they will deny that that's what they're doing. Toxic people can take advantage of people, especially people who tend to be really empathic and conscientious, people who want to make the world a better place. So the reason I'm talking about this is because I tend to attract a lot of people in my practice or who listen to my audio programs and so forth, who are really nice people. They're people who are thoughtful and conscientious. They care about how they are and how they affect others. The biggest challenges nice people have is often feeling like they have permission to set healthy limits, or that they have permission to name something as toxic because they actually feel bad about doing so. And I myself, as a pretty conscientious person, have taken a long time to realize that not only is it okay to set limits and recognize when something isn't right, but it's vital. It's vital to our well-being. So I want to give you some examples. If you have read my blog on Psychology Today, The Integrationist, you'll see that a few of the posts, and actually they're some of my most popular ones, but a few of the posts have been on what I'll refer to and what's referred to in the research as the dark tetrad. So what's the dark tetrad? It sounds like an anti-hero group, right? And the dark tetrad is the way certain researchers have described 4 types of personalities. So narcissists, many of you probably have heard that term before. And we want to think of narcissists as people who are really self-centered, entitled, maybe kind of grandiose. They tend to portray themselves as more skilled or more important and so forth than they might actually objectively be. Other people's feelings really tend not to be important at the end of the day. The reason why narcissists are so seductive, right? They lure us in is because they also can be super charming, super engaging, super likable. And what happens is we experience something called cognitive dissonance. I know it's a term many people have heard, but not everyone is familiar with what it means. But when we have a feeling or a thought, hey, this person that I like, that I want to like, that I thought was my friend has just done something really hurtful, or is taking advantage of me, or something to that effect, or is lying to me. The feeling that generates, this disconnect between what we think this person really is and what we really want them to be, and what a part of us is realizing is exactly the opposite. Right? That they're actually doing something that a true friend wouldn't do. Well, we try to resolve that discomfort, that cognitive dissonance, this discomfort between these two opposite thoughts and feelings about someone by coming up with all of the good reasons why somebody might have done something, or why we might have to be just misinterpreting something they're doing, or maybe we have done something to bring this on ourselves. So narcissists, that's the first type of toxic person. The second type is some type of person we refer to as Machiavellian. So Machiavellian personalities are people who love to kind of plot and scheme behind the scenes and create chaos, who might, tell stories behind someone's back in order to create discord between two people and then deny it, that sort of thing. If you've seen, I'm trying to think of a current movie that might be, filled with Machiavellians. Like if you've watched the Game of Thrones, you'll see that there are a lot of people in that series who really like to scheme. Right? They like to scheme and plot and create chaos and be the most important person in a way, or the most powerful person, because they're the ones in the know. Another type of personality in that dark tetrad is sociopaths. So we think about sociopaths as people who have, no problems breaking rules or breaking the law, or kind of generally do things without any sort of concern for other people's well-being. All of the people in the dark tetrad would be low on empathy, or the ability to experience something from another's point of view, or even they don't even necessarily have the desire to experience something from another person's point of view. So you might think of somebody who's kind of a serial criminal, somebody who does things that harm other people, because it's a means to an end for them. Not so much that they necessarily enjoy the harm, but it's not a problem for them. That's kind of a sociopathic type of personality. And then the last one would be someone who's a sadist. And a sadistic personality, in short, is somebody who really just enjoys hurting for the sake of hurting. So whether that's emotional harm or physical harm, it's somebody who gets their thrills literally by hurting others. People, pets, somebody important to you, sabotaging things for you that, just for the pure joy of doing damage. Now, in the psychology world, when we look at things in studies, we try to put people in neat categories by their responses on questionnaires or based on experiments. But what we found is that often there is overlap across these categories. So somebody might be a narcissist who also kind of just enjoys doing things that upset or hurt people. So that would be the sadistic part of them and so forth. Or you might have somebody who is Machiavellian and likes scheming and also happens to commit crimes because they're a means to an end. And there's the thing that's in common with all of these kind of types in that dark tetrad are that they all, again, lack empathy. They don't really care about how they affect you. Now, you're probably saying, well, if somebody was really awful, I would, of course, note this and stay away from them. What I think is important for most people to know is that the people who can be the most harmful to you actually aren't the strangers, that you may or may not encounter, or somebody who's doing something on a big scale, like somebody who's going to pull off a huge bank heist because they just don't care and they're enjoying that. It's the people who are in our everyday environments, people in our own families, people at work, people in our classrooms at school, or and so forth, a neighbor. And the thing is, even though most people are pretty decent, there are people who really just are going to enjoy messing with you to mess with you, or will seek you out because you're a nice person and they know that they can take advantage of you. And in everyday life, this can cause you, the conscientious person, an undue amount of distress, right? Because you're not only feeling bad because of what's happening to you, you might feel powerless and stressed out, but you may also feel completely unentitled to say something, especially if the person looks right at you and denies it. You may have encountered this with somebody who will do something that you know that they did and then lie about it, even though it's clear to both of you that you know. And that's kind of that type of gaslighting, actually, which is another term you might hear, but where somebody tries to manipulate you to the point that you wind up questioning your own reality. So, I'm trying to think of other good examples, like, the friend who, has an affair with someone's partner, their best friend's partner, especially if they do it more than with one partner of that friend, and then tries to blame that on the friend rather than taking responsibility. What you'll notice is that a lot of people who fall into those categories aren't great at taking responsibility. They just don't. It's in their minds, it's never them, it's never their fault, and they don't care. Because again, other people are a means to an end. What you'll also find is that people who fit into one or more of these types are uncannily good at seeking out people that they can get a lot from, who invest a lot of energy and place high importance on being good and kind and nice and tolerant and turning the other cheek and so forth. They're also really good at finding people to enable them, right? It could be the person who, is maybe a family member and keeps doing things that are clearly anybody else would say that's just not okay, it's not fair, it's cruel, and so forth. Like if you checked with people outside of your family group, you would say that's not okay. But often what's happened is that they have really found that their partners or their own children even, or other relatives, will just tolerate anything they do. And anybody who says otherwise or calls them out on their behavior is upsetting the apple cart, and they're gonna put the pressure on that person to stop. So it can be incredibly disempowering to be in a situation like that. But what can you do, right? Because there's no point in me bringing all of this up unless I have some things that you can do to start taking better care of you and feeling better. So one thing is just to at first be aware, and be aware of times where, something occurs and you observe it and, the behavior, and clearly that it's something you would never do because it would violate your ideas of right and wrong about how you would treat somebody in a relationship. Note that, and note the feelings of discomfort that come up in you when you think of setting a limit. Now, I'm aware that sometimes it's really hard to set a limit. Again, when a toxic person is just going to deny it till the end, or they have a lot of enablers around them, or, when it's your boss, or, and so forth. When you're in a situation where it's really much harder to call it like you see it. But it's really important to just begin by noting it. You might even want to keep a journal and write it down. You might want to check in with a counselor if you need support, especially if this is something that's been going on for a long time. I highly recommend that. The other thing is when you're not sure, or you feel like, this person, if they are truly and you can insert the role, my friend, my parent, my sibling, my neighbor, and so forth, my clergy person, right? The old lady down the street, it could be anybody. So ask yourself, would I ever treat that person or someone else in this way? And if not, why not? And then think about the values that you hold that would prevent you from doing something like that. And then think about what kind of limits you would want to set. So a part of you will automatically, I want to caution you, will come up with reasons why you can't set the limit. You would be a bad person because this person will be angry with you, even if another part of you knows that's ridiculous, right? You have every right to, and you should stand up for yourself. You will find that those feelings often come up when we think about setting limits. So, especially with people who can also be very charming, or again, will look right at you and tell you they didn't do the thing that you just experienced them doing or saw them do. So one thing you can do is imagine if there were no worries for you about setting limits, what kind of limit would you ideally want to set? Now, one might be just saying, that's it, I'm done, and cutting off contact with that person. That's probably something you're not going to do very often for a variety of reasons. If it's somebody in your family, you might have to see them at least at holidays, or if it's your boss, you might have to work on finding another job before setting a lot of limits with your boss. You still have to go into work in order to keep a job in the meanwhile. But that's one option you might think about, and you just should give yourself complete mental freedom to think about that and see in your mind, how might that play out and how would you like that to play out? Another option, the most common one really, is just to change the parameters of the relationship. Now, sometimes that's going to be something you do really overtly with the person, and you say, so-and-so, if you keep, saying these hurtful things to me, or being nasty, or whatever the problem behavior is, you're just not going to be welcome in my home again. Or I'm just not going to keep doing XYZ for you if you're really disrespectful. And so that might be one thing. And again, allow your mind to play the solution out, knowing that you don't have to act on it until you're more ready than not. And you get to kind of keep tweaking it and changing it in your mind to make it feel like something you can actually do. Another thing would be to just have limits on the time that you spend with somebody. So if it's someone you feel like you still want to have in your life, but you know that more than an hour lunch or an overnight visit is too much, then set those parameters. Just only make yourself available for those things that you feel like are okay for you. It might mean that you don't respond to texts or emails that are horribly demanding or devaluing or nasty. And you just make that clear maybe and say, if you speak to me that way, I'm not going to respond. Sometimes it won't even be worth your time to set an overt limit, even if it's not a huge limit, because the thing is, most toxic people depend upon nice people to supply them with something. So either that's companionship or compliance, like they want you to do things for them. It might be money. It might be, you can think of a million things that toxic people depend on. Some toxic people actually also just don't like to be alone. And so they want to make sure that they have people around them, or they want to have your constant and uniformly positive feedback. It really depends on the person. But, you might just find that you take longer to return that phone call, or you don't reply to every text, or you just plan more things where they're not a part of it. You have to decide what you want to do. It's really not possible, or it's not as common to be able to start setting limits without any discomfort. And I just want to prepare you for that. So another thing that's important to do is have your own self-care practices that help you manage discomfort. So mindfulness meditation is one of the best, because it really does help us to observe and note what we're thinking and feeling and breathe through them and refocus on the spaces in between those thoughts and feelings. And you'll find that not only are you much calmer and less emotionally attached to a particular outcome, you'll be less emotionally affected by some of the things that normally are much more stressful. And then the last thing, again, is you don't have to go it alone. You can absolutely know that other people have gone through similar things. You're certainly not the only one. And it may very well be worth finding a therapist or a counselor, some sort of licensed professional, perhaps a clergy person, but someone near you that you can speak with confidentially and get knowledgeable support. And so that's that. But again, nice people can actually still be nice people. And in fact, very nice and very good, and set limits that other people don't like. So don't let the toxic people of the world try and convince you otherwise. It's actually really important for you to take good care of yourself and set healthy limits. It's important for you. It's important for your children, because they'll wind up doing not what you say, but what you do. So how you take good care of you has a much more far-reaching effect. And the last thing, if you listen to guided imagery and you would like a little bit of help, giving yourself permission to mentally rehearse setting some limits. I have an audio program with Health Journeys, and you can also find it on Apple Music and Amazon Music and Spotify and so forth. And that is letting go of unhealthy relationships. So I hope this was helpful. If you liked this podcast, please hit like, please subscribe, share, write a review or comment, and I'll see you next time.